Greetings, everyone, on the Sci-Fiction Awesomeness. My name is Owen Cotter, and you're watching Sci-Fiction on YouTube, Sci-Fiction COM on Facebook, actually at Sci-Fiction Official on YouTube, Sci-Fiction on Twitch, and Sci-Fiction on Twitter. We're out and about on the road, getting ready to have an amazing guest come on here shortly. His name, you may have heard of him before, Mr. Sci-Fi, Marc Scott Zicree, will be joining us here shortly. Awesome to get to talk with him again. He's in the middle of doing a Kickstarter for Space Command, so we'll be bringing him on shortly. I wanted to show everybody the new trailer that they have on their Kickstarter for Space Command. Let's see if we can find that here. Here it is. Share it up. This is the brand new trailer for the Kickstarter for Space Command Forgiveness, their post-production. They have about 19 days more to go, so go to Kickstarter and find this. It's going to be a link in the description of this video as well as on YouTube and I believe Twitter. And if you like it, definitely pledge. It is going to be an amazing next installment of the Space Command goodness. Here we go.
Hi guys, Marc Zicree here. You may know me from the many iconic TV shows I've written for, the best-selling books I've authored, my popular Mr. Sci-Fi YouTube channel, or Space Command, the TV show I've been writing, producing, and directing with my wife Elaine. We've now reached a terrific milestone. We have shot half of the 12-hour first season. That's over 6 hours of Space Command adventures. Like many of us, I was inspired by the original Star Trek and even wrote for Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, as well as Babylon 5 and many other shows. I noticed in recent years that the kind of hope-filled future that Star Trek had presented us with, the kind of future that could inspire us, was not being presented on the shows that I was seeing. And so I decided not to go to the studios and networks who could have ruined it. I decided to go directly in my audience, and you guys responded. As a result of our Kickstarter campaigns and selling investment shares, we were able to open Space Command Studios and shoot the first 6 hours of Space Command. And now we are offering the box set. Let me give you a little overview of it. It's quite wonderful. The first 2 hours we shot of Space Command was Redemption, which introduced us to our main character, Captain Jack Kemmer, his crew on the spaceship Paladin, and a number of other wonderful characters. The cast included Doug Jones, Mira Furlan, Bob Picardo, Bill Mumy, Michael Harney, Bruce Boxleitner, and a newcomer who won the worldwide talent search we held, Ethan McDowell, who was on Doom Patrol and The Walking Dead. The second 2 hours, which we've just completed shooting, is Forgiveness. It stars Nichelle Nichols, who I first met when I was 10 when Star Trek was on the air, when I got a tour of the Star Trek studio stage. So it stars Nichelle Nichols, as well as Ferran Tahir of J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, James Hong of Everything Everywhere All at Once, Blade Runner, and Big Trouble in Little China, and wrestling legend John Hennigan. It's a terrific storyline. It takes place on an alien ship and on other vehicles throughout the galaxy. It has incredible aliens. It's just an amazing storyline that not only takes place during the timeline of Jack Kemmer, but also the timeline of his great-grandson, Captain Matt Kemmer, played by Eric Yaffe, another winner of our worldwide talent search. Now, we're not going to just be presenting these in the high-definition full-color versions, but we're also going to offer them in what we call the platinum editions, black and white versions. Because the aesthetic of Space Command is harkening back to the 50s without being corny, without being tongue-in-cheek, it's just a great design era for science fiction. The Platinum Edition is in black and white, and it has a really different vibe and very fun to watch, and very much like a 1950s classic science fiction movie, like Day the Earth Stood Still or some of the other great science fiction movies of that era. Now also, I decided to do a prequel to Redemption that would take place 30 years from now and 30 years before the first episode, Redemption, takes place. And I wanted to have the characters be 30 years younger, but of course I didn't have millions to de-age them, a la Lucasfilm or Scorsese. And so I had the idea of doing a radio play and then marrying it to a graphic novel. And what we could then create was an animated storyboard. And we got our entire cast together, Michael Harney, Mira Furlan, Robert Picardo, Doug Jones, Bill Mumy, and recorded the prequel, which sets the stage for our story. It's called United Planet, and it deals with global warming, it deals with many other issues. And I once asked Neil deGrasse Tyson how we might go into space in a way that would help solve climate change, and he gave me this incredible answer. And so I incorporated that into United Planet and asked him if he would be in the graphic novel, and he very kindly agreed.
He said it might work, not that the idea isn't crazy.
Now also in this wonderful box set as a bonus episode is Ripple Effect. Now Ripple Effect has a very strange and interesting genesis, because during the pandemic we were all locked in, we were all stuck at home, and my actor friends were climbing the walls. They couldn't perform, they couldn't do anything creative, and so Elaine and I had the idea of creating a 2-hour episode where the actors could shoot the scenes in their own homes with their own cameras, and we would direct them long distance and put it together as an episode.
Got that?
Now it was very different stylistically because we had monologues, we had all sorts of things that normally you don't do generally in television, but because it was an unusual time, and because I had so many characters that I wanted to introduce in Space Command that we hadn't gotten to yet, we took a run at it. And it's a little rough around the edges, but it's really fun. And once you watch the entire first season of Space Command, it'll all be understood what we were up to. And fortunately, we shot Nichelle Nichols just before the pandemic hit. We also were able to get Armin Shimmerman. Neil deGrasse Tyson is in it. My friend Christina Moses, who starred in A Million Little Things. J.G. Hertzler of Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. Francois Chow of The Expanse. And Barbara Bain from Mission Impossible and Space 1999, plus many of our other Space Command actors. So it was quite a thrill to be able to create that episode. So in addition to these episodes, United Planet, Redemption, Forgiveness, Ripple Effect, we'll have tons of extras on this box set that have not been on any release before, which will include our convention panels, it'll include behind the scenes, it'll include all sorts of items on how we put Space Command together, and it'll be really something that you'll want to own. So far, you guys have been enormously vital in making this wonderful dream come true. Space Command stands for something, which is a future in which we can create a world worth living in by not giving in to fear, by not giving in to polarization, but rather giving into compassion, giving into our true hearts and our true selves, and reaching across boundaries and barriers. Thank you so much for making this dream a reality. I am so eager to share these wonderful episodes with you and share with you how they came to exist and where we're going from here. Thanks so much. Talk to you next time.
There you go. There's the Kickstarter official video for the Space Command, their new awesome Kickstarter. Highly recommend checking that out on Kickstarter. The link will be in the description of this video on Facebook, YouTube, and all the other social medias. Joining us here shortly will be Mark. We are going to go and show you a little bit what we're going to be doing for the next couple of minutes before he joins us. We're going to be at Fan Expo in January. Oh, coffee goodness there. Fan Expo in January, bring that up here real quick. It's real quick. Fan Expo is a 3-day event taking place January 5th, 6th, and 7th, 2024 at the New Orleans Ernst N. Memorial Convention Center. We will be there on site. We're probably doing some speaking at some of the panels and some other goodies down there too. So stay tuned for announcements on that via our site at Sci-Fiction and via our Facebook and social medias. We will be here's some of the guests. You got some great guests: Daredevil, Katie Sackhoff, Mandalorian Battlestar, Vincent D'Onofrio, Sean Gunn himself, Jason Lee, Danny Trejo, Holly Marie Combs, Rose McGowan. We got some amazing voice actors that are lining up. We've got Peter Cullen, Optimus Prime himself, all 4 Ninja Turtles voice actors, Ryan Colt Levy from Chainsaw Man. Looks like they've added some new ones. You've got Spy Family, Natalie Van Sistine, Sarah Wiedenhoff. She's super nice lady. I've met her before. So there's a lot of good stuff. You also got comic book creators. You've got creators such as, we got a lot. That's a good one there. Michael Golden. All these are legends. Some really good ones. Gigi, she's always fun to talk to. She does stuff for Sonic and Transformers. Really cool. She's always fun to talk to. Guy Kilcrest, he's awesome. He does stuff for the Muppets. Looks like you've got some. I want to see if our boy Tim Laddie, there he is. Awesome. I love talking with him. So many good artists and so many good creators at the event coming up. It's gonna be awesome. I think our next event after that will be, I'm trying to think, probably something on the Gulf Coast, and then we'll be kind of gearing up, kind of that focal point to the summertime for the summer events, such as like San Diego Comic Con and others. Probably the Star Trek event, STLV 58 year mission in Las Vegas. We're looking at going to that as well again. We had a really good time, really fun time down there with our friends at Space Command as well, that were down there this past year at both Comic Con and at STLV 57, what's coming up on 58 years. I cannot believe it's almost 60 years of Star Trek. That is amazing. Super, super cool. We're going to be bringing on Mark here shortly. I think he'll be logging in here probably next 5 minutes. We do want to make some announcements. If you are watching this right now or listening to this, this is episode, I believe, 56 on the Subspace Radio Network iHeartRadio show. So just stay tuned. This will be aired next week, a Thursday, 7 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific on Subspace Radio Network, iHeartRadio. Sci-Fiction Radio is the name of the show. Check it out. It's a great platform for people that have not heard of Subspace. It's on iHeartRadio. It is an amazing radio channel. They have a lot of good shows like The Seventh Rule, Sirach Lofton show with Ryan Husk that they do. It's a kind of a sci-fi Star Trek themed show. They also have some paranormal, Intrepid broadcast, Dean Hagelin, show the Chill Pack Hollywood Hours on there. They got a little bit of everything. We're kind of the big sci-fi. One of the big sci-fi. We've also got the Mark Who 42's award-winning Doctor Who broadcast is on there. There's some really great shows on there. So I highly recommend going to, it's put on by the Federation. So if you go to, I think it's Trek Federation or thefederation.com, there's a link and they'll have the big enterprise animation coming at you on the screen. If you click the link to Subspace, it'll bring you to the live player that you can also, we're also archived on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, just about everywhere on earth you can find the Sci-Fiction Radio. After the show airs, it archives on shortly after on those broadcast channels. So this, our audio version of this segment will be edited and put together on Subspace Radio Network next week. So we're really looking forward to that. We're bringing in Mark here in just a little bit. We really enjoyed hanging out with him down at Comic-Con. They had a big screening down there. This past year, I know the SAG strike's going on, so they were actually one of the biggest things going on down there. We had a panel, a screening, and a little screening, and the signing. I had a signing down there. He was right next to Todd McFarlane, matter of fact. So it's pretty big stuff. And this film project's been dear to my heart. I've been following over the last decade since its inception. Mark's done such an amazing job with putting together, a brilliant cast, a very, very diverse cast, and a very beautiful universe that presents, the hopeful vision of the science fiction future of awesomeness. And it's kind of got that retro 1950s vibe to like Space Patrol and Star Trek. So it's really, really cool. If you have not checked out Space Command, I highly recommend going to Mark's channel at Mr. Sci-Fi. That's youtube.com/Mr. MRSCIFI, Mr. Sci-Fi. Check his channel out. The Kickstarter is in the description for the new Kickstarter for Space Command. Highly recommend checking out. If you like sci-fi, whether new or old, vintage, pop culture, anything that deals with futurism concepts, hopefulness, inclusive future of sci-fi awesomeness, highly recommend checking it out. It's going to be an amazing, amazing series. They've already got 6 hours filmed. They're working on the second half. There'll be a full 12-hour run. They've got a box set, all kind of awesome perks and everything you can ever imagine, including the Platinum Edition, which I want to talk to him a little bit about. I think that's kind of like get back to the old black and white days of sci-fi before they had Technicolor like Star Trek. So we're looking forward to talking to him on that. We've got a lot of stuff going on. We've been bringing on some new writers onto the site. And we've got a really great writer named Dia. She's been doing a lot of stuff with us for video games. And she's just a blessing to have on board, as well as Kieran, for our London Wizard of Awesome. He's out there just Star Wars, TV shows, movies. We've got Dominic. He's out there. He's a freelancer, does a lot of stuff magazines as well. I think Mark is here on the Quantum Leap Wedding Room. How you doing there, Mark? Let me bring you on here.
Good. I'm doing good.
There you go. Side double screens. How's your day going, sir?
It's great. Every day is Christmas.
Yes, indeed it is. So you've got a Kickstarter going on now, and you've got a lot of goodies. Can you talk a little about what's going on with that?
Sure, you bet. Well, I came up with this idea for a show called Space Command, and it would be an inspiring space-going show like Star Trek had been for me when I was a kid. Something that said that we can actually create a future worth living in if we
Right.
just reach across boundaries and barriers and don't polarize and demonize other people. And so my fans responded, and via selling investment shares and Kickstarter campaigns, we managed to shoot half of the entire first season. So we just finished shooting hour 6, yeah, and 6 more hours to go. And so we've launched a Kickstarter campaign for post-production on the 2-hour episode that we've just completed shooting, and
Mm.
it's pretty cool, pretty fun, and I have no complaints from me, and and the Kickstarter campaign includes things like set visits, walk-on
Mhm.
roles, speaking roles, long distance roles where you don't have to even live in LA to be on.
How does that work exactly? Long distance
There's
one.
two different ways we can do that. One is, in Space Command headquarters or on a flagship in a space battle, you have all those screens with people reporting in, on the other ships
Right, like
and so forth.
view
And so
screens and
that,
all.
yeah, yeah, and then the other way is by literally having someone shoot a scene against a green screen where they are, and
Mm.
we direct them long distance. And that's another way of doing it, where we can actually drop them into the scene, via the magic of visual effects.
Right.
And but it's really really fun, and we have miniature figures of me and miniature figures of
Oh
Captain
wow.
Jack, our hero, and miniatures of our hero spaceship, the Paladin.
Oh,
So it
there
can,
you go. There it is.
zoom, so you can basically, have
Well, it
your own.
takes off like this. It goes like a ramp. It goes like a ramp like that, right? Up
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it goes up, a
Right.
la Fireball XL5 and When
That's
Worlds
right.
Collide. Yes, 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 yes. And there's books that you can get, and I just released a new book. Last Monday would have been my mother's 100th birthday, and so I released a new book that's a memoir about her
Very
and how she raised me and created this bizarre character that I am, and and so
You're a
it's
cool
just.
guy, man. I always enjoy talking with you. It's all good.
Thank you, thank you. And so there's a lot of perks. You can get producer credits, all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's basically that what I did in designing the perks was I said to myself, well, when I was a kid watching Star Trek, what would
Mhm.
have been my dream come true? And
Right.
to become a producer on a show, or to be an actor in a show, or or even when I was 10, I got to tour the original Star Trek sets. When I was there for the last episode they ever shot, Turnabout Intruder, and it was magic. It was wonderful, and that kind of set me on the path that led to me having a career in TV that began in my early 20s, and is still going strong now. So super cool.
That's that's super cool for sure. You got this box set. I was showcasing the Kickstarter video before we aired the broadcast before I brought you on. You got this thing called the Platinum Edition. What is
Yeah.
that?
Yes. Well, one of our supporters, Matt Weiss, came up with a really cool idea. He said, because we have the versions in full color, the whole 9 yards, just like if you turned on Prime, Amazon Prime, or Netflix, or any of those guys. And but he said, this thing has such a. I deliberately gave it a 1950s aesthetic in terms of the
Right.
design aesthetic, because I love that the book covers, the magazine covers, the movies from that era, just
Me too.
terrific. And no one had really done that aesthetic recently. So I thought, well, let's do that. So Matt said, well, why don't we take the first 2 hours of the show and put it in black and white, because it'll give it a very different vibe. And it did. It really harkened to that period and was a very different experience. Uh, on the most recent Mad Max movie, they'd done what
Mhm.
was called the Chrome Edition, which was in
Chrome.
black and
Yeah,
white.
Chrome.
And so we call these the Platinum Edition, and we're releasing the episodes in black and white as well as color, and of course all the bells and whistles, the commentaries and behind the scenes and special featurettes and all that stuff.
So you've got the first 6 hours
Hmm.
filmed. What's
Right.
what do we got to look forward to in the next 6 hours? What kind of stuff you got going on with that? And the
Well,
progression, the lineage of all the generations and all too.
yeah. Well, the way I designed Space Command was there would be 2-hour stories that could split down the middle as 1-hour episodes, and those 2-hour stories would tell a beginning, middle, and end. But then the next 2-hour story builds from that. So it's very much like what Star Wars did with the first three Star Wars films. But so that the entire season tells a big arcing story, but you can watch one of the 2-hour episodes and really get a complete storyline. It doesn't just end on cliffhangers endlessly, and
Right.
So so in the next 6 hours of Space Command, the first 6 hours we've met our main characters, we've established the world of Space Command and a number of the factors that are going to pay off in the last 6 hours. And so the one after the one we've just finished shooting one called Forgiveness, and
Mm-hmm.
that leads directly into Great Solar War. So we actually jumped 20 years, and one of the people who was one of the actors who played Robert Picardo's child in the
Mm-hmm.
first 2 hours is now an adult, and so as a
Right.
result, so now as a result of actions that were taken in the first episode, he's now become sort of a world conqueror. He's sort of
Oh
like
wow.
he's sort of like an Alexander the Great kind of character, and he holds a real grudge against some of our guys,
Oh wow.
and so essentially it's the characters in the outer colonized moons and
Mhm.
so forth of the outer part of the solar system coming basically to chew gum and take names, and to
It's a full
and
out war, like a big like solar
yes,
system war. Wow.
yes, yes, but as opposed to many space battle kind of stories, it really examines the notion of war and the
Mm.
notion that war has so much terrible outcome in on both sides that the issue is how do you avoid war? How do you stop war? How do you see the other side as human? And very much what's going on right now in Gaza and with Israel and in all around the world you can find these things even in Maine with that crazy shooter who's running around loose.
I
Um,
was on the news today. I just saw that recently on the feed. Yeah.
Crazy. But
Yeah.
you if you see the enemy not as the person on the other side of the border, but you see violence as the
Mhm.
enemy, okay, and you see suffering as the enemy, then you can start to deal with this. And that's not to paint, be looking through rose-colored glasses or anything. We've been doing a project recently with someone in the House of Lords in England who was a
Mhm.
worldwide peace activist. And
Mm.
he was one of the prime drivers of the Irish peace accords, where
Right.
North and South Ireland, came to peace. And so we've been talking about, well, when two sides actually hate each other and have a lot of grievance about deaths on both sides, how do you find peace when you're
Right.
dealing with all of that baggage? And so this is what we really go into in Great Solar War, and then from that, it goes to the next 2 hour episode, which is called Empire, and that
Mm.
follows uh, Robert Picardo and his son and his grandson. And his grandson, Robert Picardo's grandson, is played by Armin Shimmerman, who
Oh
Quark,
wow. Nice.
Quark of Deep Space Nine, and Christina Moses. From A Million Little Things, who also played Sulu's daughter in the Star Trek episode I did, World Enough in Time. Christina Moses will play Armin's daughter. So very interesting, gene pool there. But it's about, again, how you recognize the whole point of the first season is we must start seeing the one race as the human race,
Yes.
and we are not. We were brought up to believe that our little teeny band, like those in our little teeny band living in the trees or whatever, that's us, and anyone who's outside that is them, and they're a danger. And that's the wiring we've had for millions of years, but it no longer serves us. But that doesn't mean there aren't real predators out there. I mean, and so, you don't want to make nice with a leopard that's looking at you as dinner, but so we encounter a life form that actually is a predator. It's actually a
Mm.
parasitic species, but extremely dangerous, extremely destructive, and that becomes the enemy that we really have to deal with. And we have to recognize that humanity, us as it were, isn't even just humans. It ultimately becomes humans and other species that are not our enemy. But then there is something that can destroy all of us, and that's what we ultimately have to face down through Empire, and then the final episode, Harvester, and that closes out our season, and that's where we're going. And I've spent the last few years buying all the sets and costumes and props and building stuff. So we now have three stages, two small stages and a large stage at Space
Oh,
Command Studios. We've got alien spaceship sets, and we've got giant robots and 8 foot tall creatures and you name it. And
sounds like Christmas morning.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so we're ready to block shoot the rest of the season. We've got the scripts. Elaine and I are now writing my wife Elaine and I are writing the production draft of Great Solar War, and then we can roll right into Empire, which is already written, and then into Harvester. And so All it takes is the money, and so that's why we're doing the Kickstarter campaign. That's why we're still selling shares for $7,500 each, and the people who buy shares get a portion of my profits, my producers' net profits in the show, in each in
Right.
the first four episodes, then the second four episodes, then the third four episodes, and we've just been in discussions with two uh, distributors who want to distribute Space Command worldwide,
Really?
and one wants to start immediately by distributing the first 2 hours, which are completed,
Mm.
and take those to Cannes and sell it worldwide.
Oh,
And
nice. Wow.
and
Congratulations.
the other distributor wants to wait until we have the entire season, so it's a win-win. We can actually go with both companies, and so that's great. But obviously we're using the funding from Kickstarter and the funding from selling investment
Right.
shares to deliver content. Now, once it gets into distribution, then profits start coming back, which
Right.
I'll be sharing with our investors. But that's the whole name of the game. So, and what it gives me is total freedom. So I don't have to listen to a studio note or something. I mean, we've all seen shows.
Executive or whatever, the
Well, yeah.
boardroom.
I mean,
Right.
and it's not even that they're stupid, the executives. I've dealt with a lot of. I've written for all the major studios and networks
Right.
over a career that's almost 50 years now, and they can be very smart
Yeah.
and delightful people, but their objective is different from yours. My objective is to create a show that I love, that has a truth from my heart, that's something fresh and new that I haven't seen a million times before. Their objective is simply to make money for the company. And they
Right.
might want to make great shows or good shows, but ultimately the bottom line is going to determine what happens. And so if the boss says cancel Expanse, or if boss says, make this show stupid, put a goofy looking robot or a kid
Right.
or a dog in it or whatever, they have to do it because those are the guys writing the checks, and I don't have that problem. Also, another thing is the network would never have allowed me the cast that I got. If I had said I
Right.
want to cast Robert Picardo, Mira Furlan, Bill Mumy, Bruce
For sure.
Boxleitner, James Hong, all of these actors, they would have said, well, who are those people? We want someone who's just on the CW show and can't act. So know, I don't have those problems,
Right.
and that's so I'm a happy camper, but it's
Yeah.
fun. But I can look down, and then after Space Command, we have five other shows we're doing with the creators of Farscape and Defiance and The Expanse and
Mm.
Twilight Zone and on and on. I mean, just we have a lot to come, and we just have to get the machine, to make these shows because they're written, they're waiting. It's going to be the I was producer on Sliders. That was when it was on the Sci-Fi
Oh,
Channel.
I love that show, man. That's
Yeah,
just great.
but season four. But we were always wondering, and when the Sci-Fi
Mm.
Channel debuted, all of us who were geeks, we all thought this is
Right.
going to be great. This is going to be curated and present all the science fiction we've wanted to see that we've never seen, all the smart stuff, all the great stuff. And then it didn't happen. You might have every now and then you get Sliders or something good, but there was a
Right.
lot of crap. And I
Yeah.
remember one time I talked to the head of the network and I said, well, I had several conversations with the head of the Sci-Fi network when I
Mm.
was a producer working for them. One time I went in to meet with the head of the network, and he said, I just tried watching that Babylon 5, and I just don't get it. And then he said,
Oh, wow.
and I tried to watch Sliders, and I really don't understand it. And I thought, this guy shouldn't be running this network
Definitely not.
because he was not a science fiction fan. And then later, I had another conversation with a different head of the network a little later, and I said, "Look, you know, you could be making all these great science fiction shows
Right.
and science fiction movies, and instead you're putting this wrestling crap, all this other stuff
Oh, yeah. I
on
forgot they put the WWE on there for
yeah,
one.
or the asylum movies that are just kind of seen them all, and some of them can be fun like Sharknado, but they're not Citizen Kane by any means. And I said, why are you filling your network with crap? And he
Right.
said, well, here's the problem. You can make a terrific show, and it
Mm.
gets 3 million viewers, and then
Right.
you can put on an episode of wrestling, and it gets 10 million, and you
Right.
cannot justify to the heads of the studio why you don't put on the bad
Mm.
programming if it gets a bigger viewership and more money
Like
comes in.
the ratings based on the viewership. I guess.
Right. And how can you argue with that? You can't. But you can design a different machine that where you don't have to dance to that tune,
For
to
sure.
mix a metaphor. And that's what I've done. Because the moment I
Mm.
realized that with digital cameras and the internet and crowdfunding and selling investment shares, the moment I realized that the studios and the networks weren't the only game in town, which they were when I started in television, they were for decades. But
Right.
now I can basically have my own network, and so.
Pretty
Um,
cool, isn't
yeah, so the
it?
five
Yeah.
series, the six series we're doing, including Space Command, are all under the umbrella of the Showrunners Network. And
Cool.
so I'm just teaming with all these people who I know who are brilliantly talented, like Mark Ferguson, Hawk Ostby, who created and ran The Expanse,
Oh,
and
like,
and Rockney O'Bannon, who created Farscape and Alienation and Sequest and Defiance and
oh,
Mission.
Sequest was a good one too. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was also recently the executive producer on the show Evil on CBS.
Mhm.
And I just know a lot of these people. There's a new Rod Serling show I want to do, and I'm talking to the
You
Serling
talked a
family.
little bit about that
Yeah,
over at STLV 57. Can you tell
yeah,
us a little bit about what that's about?
sure. Well, as you know, and probably a lot of the fans know, I wrote the Twilight Zone Companion. I'm the world's expert on the Twilight Zone, and if you want to hear me talk for 30 hours, buy the Blu-ray because I did 52 episode commentaries,
Yep.
and so. After Rod experienced his first great success with a live TV show called Patterns in
Mhm.
1956, from that prior to that he'd been writing on a typewriter because he didn't have a lot of money. But once
Right.
he started earning good money in television, he would dictate his scripts into a recording machine,
Mhm.
and then his secretary would type it up, and then he would make hand corrections, and that would be what was shot.
Yeah.
So for decades, it was assumed that all of these recordings were lost, and then someone found 1,000 hours of them.
Oh yeah. First, you
Rod
said
Serling,
that over at yeah.
right. Rod Serling dictating scripts, speeches, letters, all in his unique style, all with that wonderful voice of his. Not just, I don't just mean the vocal style, which is terrific. I mean his way of speaking, which
The
was
storytelling aspect of it
just
is the way he
unique.
did it. Yeah.
There's such a precision to the way he speaks. It's just phenomenal. And
Mhm.
so they found them. They're at a university archive. They've been digitized now. And my
Wow.
idea was to take, it's called Rod Serling's After Twilight, and it would
Mhm.
be a show made up of scripts by Rod Serling that were never made. There's a number of Night Gallery scripts that reverted back to Rod because they weren't made. He was always butting heads with that showrunner, Jack
Right.
Leonard, and also other scripts he wrote that never got made, and live TV scripts he wrote that got made but haven't been seen in 60, 70 years.
Wow.
Plus, it would be scripts by Matheson, Beaumont, George Clayton
Mhm.
Johnson, other great fantasy writers. I'd reach out to Neil Gaiman, whoever's cool and is the Twilight Zone kind of writer. But the coolest part would it be narrated by Rod Serling himself from those
That's
letters,
that's
from those
solid.
speeches. Yeah, and so because Rod is always talking about the issues that are meaningful to him, racism, the inhumanity, lack of compassion, conformity, all of these issues really, and the reason Twilight Zone has lasted and is still as powerful as it ever was is because these are universal
For sure.
issues. Yeah, and whether he's talking about the Holocaust or what's going on in Gaza now, it's the issue of man's inhumanity to man, and as was the raid on Israel by those guys. It's like, and so Rod was always on the side of humanity. He was always on the side of the little guy and justice. And same with Gene Roddenberry. And so that's one of the other shows. So
Reminds me of the episode that was Meteor 7 when they're doing the war with the computer or whatever.
yes, 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 in that episode. Because again, well, the funny thing about the original Star Trek was, if Jim Kirk comes to a planet and they've got this stable government that's been
Right.
lasting for like thousands of years, but it's like not his kind of government, he'll blow
Right.
the thing up.
What
He'll
up?
ask the
Let's
computer
go to
to
the
fix
computer.
it. Yeah, it's great. And then this is like people are all left like wandering around going, "What do we do now?" It's like, you say, "Well, you'll work it out. Here's a copy of the Constitution." It's like Bill of Rights or whatever. E pleb nista, e pleb nista, we the
Right.
people.
That's
It's
right.
great, 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 great. So but yes, absolutely. So that's what I do with my time. I write books, I make TV, I do whatever the hell I want to do. But TV has always been my primary art form ever since I was a kid and saw Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Star Trek, the original versions of those three shows. That was what I wanted to do with my life. Absolutely, absolutely.
You've got this. That's amazing. Because you started in television, and now it's come to while you've got all this technology now. Like you talked about the modern age of crowdfunding, and
Yes.
like we're now live streaming on 4 networks to three hundred
Yeah.
thousand people. And I don't know how many people we reach. Probably we get a significant reach, but I'm going over the data this month. But I think we reached over 106 million people this past year alone.
Wow,
So
that's great.
yeah,
That's great. And but
appreciate.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, go ahead. I was just,
I was just going to say that this is the wonderful world that we live in now. You know, a lot of people sort of talk about the dangers of things like AI or bullying or all these things that the modern technology has allowed, but they don't often talk about the miracles. I mean, I think one of the reasons why it's so hard for, you know, the terrible things happening in Gaza to um, to escalate is simply because
mhm.
people can see immediately. They can see, yes, it's children. It's
On the
children.
news,
It's
on
women.
social media,
You know,
everywhere.
yes, and the internet brings us in the old days, you know, like World War II or whatever, it was distant, and you might see a newsreel, but it didn't have that immediacy and that humanity that it
Right.
has now. And I think this technology is very powerful and does show us other kinds of people, and then we see that they're the same as us in many ways. Mothers raising their children, fathers wanting their families to be safe and well. You know, it's you know, and that's great. You know, so I think this is all a good thing, and
Yeah.
certainly with Space Command, I've gotten to know so many wonderful people all around the world. Once I was not long ago, I was going to a meeting at the BBC in London, and I came out of the subway, you know, the underground there, and someone
Mhm.
looked at me down the street and they said, "Mr. Sci-Fi." They said, "I love." And
Right.
you know, it's like, thank you, you know,
Awesome.
it's like, and so it's great. I love it, and you know, it's I wouldn't go back to the old way if I could. You know, it's like I love my life now very much so.
You mentioned AI. We're actually working on some technology right now. We got 3 or 4 programmers working on a system that you mentioned. We're talking about gadgets and Kickstarters and crowdfunding. I
Yes.
can't spoil it all. We're building it out, but it does deal with the ability to create AI avatar systems and really
Mm.
cool for interacting with the fans and broadcast. It's a little mishmash of everything, and
Yes.
it's going to be
Yeah.
turned into an iOS app and a desktop experience.
Yeah,
So it
well,
should
I
be
mean, you
out.
know, it's going to be very interesting to see where AI ends up
Mhm.
because it's finally gotten to the point where it really can interact with human beings,
Yes.
and it could be a wonderful thing. It could be, or it could be Skynet. You know, it's like that's the everyone's concern. And
Right.
but you know, I created a term recently that no one has coined, I think, before me. You know, because
Hmm.
science fiction always talks about dystopia. You know, and you see all
Right.
those dystopic. You know, Terminator's one of those, of course,
Terminator.
and then there's utopia, where it's like, oh, things turn out great. But
Mhm.
no one talks about dysutopia, which is a
Mm.
combination of dystopia and utopia, which is what we are always living in. Okay,
Right.
whatever the technological journey we arrive at, it's all so we didn't have nuclear war. But
Mhm.
you know, but we had, you know, automation and stress and all these things. But we also got to have television and, you know, and all these. So it's so the life we live is always a mixture of being in a dystopic world and a utopian world. And you know, and I think that's good because what it allows you to do is be you know, to protest what's going wrong in the world, but also value what's going right, which is a lot of stuff.
For sure.
You know, and I mean, a friend of mine just had about a year ago, he had hernia surgery, and it was performed by a robot, and
Oh
so
wow.
he had this teeny tiny little incision, and his recovery was very fast. You know, and when I was like 21, I had hernia surgery, and it took a while to recover because it was some old guy with a scalpel just kind of cutting
Right.
away, you know, random or whatever. You know, so it's like, you know, it's a very different world, and
Sounds like McCoy talking about put your K whatever like he's like when there was a Star Trek 4 when
yeah,
Chekhov was in the hospital. Is my
yes.
God, man.
Yes, exactly. And you know, but so I think you know, I'm always amazed at the new technologies and very interested in them. And you know, I can't pick them up as quickly as a 5-year-old could, but you know, but I'm still utilizing all this wonderful stuff that I mean,
Right.
visual effects is something I love. All of this stuff. It's super fun. I mean, my days are filled with just enjoyment. You know, I have no complaints.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, you created. I've been following your project since its inception. I mean, it's just a roller coaster ride of fun, man.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got. I remember the original pitch you had was like, "Well, this is amazing."
Yes.
You come out there like kind of like Rod Serling a little bit, like in a little black jacket. And you're like, "Hi,
Yes.
my name's Marc Scott Zicree," and I was like, "This is dope, man. That's awesome."
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. And also, you know, one thing that was really great, you know, when Rod came up with Rod Serling never thought he was going to be a science fiction writer. He wanted to be like the Arthur Miller of television. He wanted to be a mainstream dramatist. But
Right.
because of the censorship of live TV, he couldn't talk about race. He couldn't talk about politics. There were all these things he wanted to comment on. And he thought, well, maybe if I do science fiction, they'll
Mhm.
slip past the censors if it's like on
Right.
Mars or about robots. But Rod had to write 4 Twilight Zone pilots before one of them got greenlit to series. So
Really, I didn't know that. Wow.
he was so determined. He was not going to stop until he got that show on the air. And each time he wrote one of those pilots, he was looking for ways to write something that the sponsors and the network would say, "Okay, we get it. We're good to
Right.
go." And he was determined. And with Space Command, I've been extremely determined.
Mhm.
Someone once asked me the secret of my success, and I said I don't give myself an out. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And if it's hard, it's hard. If it's easy, it's easy. That's great.
Right.
But I'm getting where I'm going no matter what. And that allows me to kind of relax because I don't have to worry whether or not I'm doing something. I'm doing it.
You're doing
We'll get the first season of Space Command done. We'll get all this other stuff done too. It's just a matter of logistics and being inventive and being clever. And also there's a great lesson in one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes, Kick the Can, where it's about an old man who believes that if he can play the children's game of Kick the Can, he'll become young again.
it.
And at one point he's asking the other old people in this old folks home to play with him, and they're all full of doubt and saying, "Oh, they don't want to look ridiculous." And he finally bursts out, he says, "I can't play Kick the Can alone."
Right.
And that's what gets them to play Kick the Can, and they become children again. And uh and that's what Space Command is like. I can't do this alone. And
Right.
so whether people buy investment shares for $7,500, or
Mhm.
they get a walk-on role in their Kickstarter campaign, or want to build a spacesuit, or want
Right.
to want to come and wire up some of these spaceship consoles we've got, or want to provide the spaceship
Right.
graphics for the screens, all of that helps. And there's so many friends I've made that I would not have known if I hadn't taken this journey. And so it's just super fun, really cool, really, really fun.
For people that are listening to this broadcast on our radio show, I think it's episode 56, we just got over a year now on the radio, and
Wow.
watching this broadcast, what is where do you go to Kickstarter? And tell us a little about how to get on the Kickstarter and find out about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, with the Kickstarter, it's Space Command Forgiveness post production. So if you just go on Kickstarter and type all that, you'll find our campaign that's currently running. It has another 19 days to go. And my YouTube channel is Mr. Sci-Fi on YouTube, SCI-FI, Mr. Sci-Fi. And I post every few days. You can watch Space Command there. You can do all sorts of stuff. And yeah, and I have interviews with Ron Moore. Nichelle Nichols is also in Space Command, by the way. And we'll be posting a lot more of clips from Space Command and behind the scenes stuff and testimonials. Neil Gaiman, we just on my Mr. Sci-Fi, we just posted Neil
Oh, I
Gaiman.
saw that. That was cool. Yeah.
That was really fun. And it's also so fun to see George Takei saying, "I want my Space Command," So, and
Very
there's lots of wonderful actors waiting in the wings to come aboard our shows. We're casting Gates McFadden and
cool.
James Hahn
Oh, wow.
again, and Veronica Cartwright from Alien, and
Mhm.
Barbara Bain from Space 1999, and just a ton of wonderful actors who you don't get to see
Jerry
near.
Anderson show. He did Fireball XL5 as well, and
Yes,
Thunderbird. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I wrote for Space Precinct. I wrote, I think, four of those
Oh,
separate.
wow. I didn't
You
know
know,
that. That's very cool.
that's a really strange show. Really, really
It is.
strange.
It's cool though. I think it's like a
Yeah,
space out
yeah.
of space cops.
Yeah, but Jerry Anderson really loved my scripts, and
Right.
that was one of his last TV shows ever, if not the last.
Yeah.
And but it was fun. It was fun. So, but these are to work with my heroes. I mean, I met Nichelle Nichols when I was 10 years old when Star Trek was on the air, TOS,
Right.
and to go full circle and cast her in Space Command and go to her house and shoot a scene with her. And I brought my scrapbook that I'd kept from when I was 10, which had the photo she'd signed to me and all these
Wow.
articles about her from that era.
Right.
Dream come true. And she's no longer with us, but we got to have that scene, and she's in Space Command. And at the end of our shooting day with her, she said to me, she said, "Thank you for blessing my home." And that
Mhm.
was just like, uh, it was so sweet. These people, once they're gone, they're gone. And fortunately, we work on an art form where we can revisit their gifts, their
Sure.
contributions again and again, and it's invaluable.
Yeah, we got to interview her a few years before she passed away. It's the
Yeah.
sweetest lady you ever get to
She
talk
was
to.
she was great, and she was so beautiful. I mean, my gosh, when she was on Star Trek, it was just your jaw dropped. And it's really fun. I took at the Star Trek convention. I finally paid to take a photo with Shatner because
Mhm.
I met him when I was like a kid on that Star Trek set, and I
Right.
wrote for him on the Tech War TV show. and yet we had never gotten a photo together. And the Star Trek convention, I thought, boy, I better get it now because the guy's like what 91, 92. I thought if I'm going to get a
93, I
photo,
think. Coming
yeah,
something.
Jesus, I thought if I'm going to get Will Shatner, now is the moment. And he's still got, he's still got energy, and he's still
Very sharp
amazing.
and energetic for
Very,
sure.
very.
Yeah,
You would never guess he's in his 90s. I mean, it's
it's great.
amazing. But it was great to get that photo with him at last, and quite an amazing man.
Yeah, we've been trying to get him. We contacted his right hand, and she said he would be interested in coming on the show to talk about his charity horse show and stuff. He's
Great.
so busy filming, but she's a real sweet lady. What's her name, Kathleen or something like that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's funny because when I wrote the Twilight Zone companion, I interviewed
Mhm,
Shatner about the two episodes he was in, Nick of
mhm.
Time and Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, and so I mean, he's an astonishing. He brings a vitality to his roles. I think it's very interesting to compare him with Jeffrey Hunter because
Mhm.
I love the first pilot. I think that's a show I would have watched. No two ways about it. But Jeffrey Hunter brings a very different vibe. He's
Yeah,
much more serious, and Shatner brings this charisma and this intensity and this impulsiveness and this
right.
womanizing quality. It's like really interesting.
It's a
And
lot of fun too. These are the way he
yes,
portrays the character and all that.
yes,
I like
yes,
the way he hosts his television series, like everything from Unexplained to all these
yeah,
shows he does on television. It's
mhm,
amazing. Some of the shit was the one he did with Henry Winkler, or those
yes.
four guys. That's great
It's so fun. It's so fun. But I mean, he's built an amazing career.
for sure.
Um, he just doesn't stop. So phenomenal guy. So
I hope he lives to be like 113 and he's still on stage talking about
yeah,
110. And he's like, he's sharp, man. I don't see how he does it. I mean, he's like,
yeah.
it's amazing.
I think it's just I think you know part of it is just passion. I mean, I think like Shatner certainly has it. I certainly have it. I mean, my wife and I combine our ages because my birthday is August 25th and hers is August 21st. So we combine our ages. We're 146, and so. But I love what I'm doing. I certainly don't feel my age, and the fact that I'm able to. Science fiction is such a wonderful world to live in. For one thing, the fans follow you from show to show to show.
Mhm.
So it's not like, you did some Western or you did some, it's like a lot of fans, they're not following the actors from all these different shows, but
Right.
they are following the science fiction actors. So Bob Picardo can be in Star Trek Voyager, then he can be in Stargate,
Mhm.
and the fans know.
Right.
And they want to see the next thing he's in. So Space Command, they see him on our poster and they go, "Wow, I love that guy,"
Right.
and I do
It's
too.
true. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
and so that's a great thing, and it's true of my career as well, all the way from when I was writing for Space Ghost and
Mhm.
Smurfs and He-Man and Super Friends and all those shows in my early 20s to like Captain Power and Star Trek and Babylon 5 and
Oh man, Captain Power. We had Timothy Dunnigan on
yeah.
for about 3 months back. It's such a pleasure to talk to him. He's become a good friend over the
Yeah,
years, and
yeah. Well,
he's amazing.
I developed that show for television. I spent a year working on that show.
Wow.
When they brought me in, they had the names of some of the characters. I changed some of the names of the characters,
Mhm.
and they had the kind of Castle Volcania and that bad guy, but they didn't have the personality. They didn't have the backstories. They
Right.
didn't have any of the ins and outs of it. And for instance, Jennifer was originally named Tiffany, and I thought, oh, give me a break. And if you ever watch Captain Power, that whole Overmind thing, I came up with that, and the
Oh, nice.
digitizing the bad guys digitizing people, I came up with
Right.
that, and on and on and on. But if you ever watch when Captain Power summons up that hologram of his
Mhm.
father,
You're right.
um, his father.
Mentor.
Yeah, his father's name in that show is Stuart Gordon Power because my dad's name is Stuart Gordon Zicree. So
Oh, nice.
my name is Power. So my fingerprints are all over it, and I wrote episodes as well. But that's the show that led directly to Babylon 5 because I insisted they hire Joe Straczynski even though he'd only done animation,
Right.
and those producers were the producers he did Babylon 5 with. So and Doug Netter was the I'm not Doug Netter, but I'm drawing a blank on this VFX guy, but Ron Thornton was the VFX guy on Captain Power, and he became the VFX genius on Babylon 5 as well.
Very, very genius. I always thought Babylon 5 was in Captain Power was some of the early versions of CGI.
Yes,
Like,
they were. They were. Captain Power was the first show to have CGI characters and interacting with the humans, and still very rudimentary. When you go back and watch it, you go, "Oh man, this is the beginning of the day." But we just our whole idea was to make that show as if it were for adults, and not step down from that at all. So we dealt with
right.
AIDS. We dealt with metaphors for AIDS. We dealt with all sorts of stuff. And when I had Jennifer be in the the sort of Hitler Youth,
Yeah.
in her backstory. It was again because dealing with the whole notion of can you change? Can you? What are those connections like? When you're dealing with the dread youth. We called it, and it's all that stuff, and it was fun. And Tank and all those characters. They were
Was
a
he like
lot
an
to write.
aqua underwater guy or something like that? It was in
Yeah,
the
there was, and they even made a toy of him, but he was less. I think when moving into the second season, they would have built up a lot more stuff, and they actually bought an entire season
hmm
of scripts for season two. Michael Reeves and Christy Marks and and Joe, of course, Straczynski, Larry DiTilio. They were a lot of the people that we all were hanging with as animation writers. Went into Captain Power, and then to so there was an entire season of scripts written. Someday they should make those shows because
They should. They really should.
that show would be so much easier to do now than back in the day.
How would they? I mean, who owns the rights? That how would they go about making that? I mean,
I think I think it was done through Doug Netter's company and Gary, what's his name?
Bedard, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, Gary Goddard. I think he probably won
Mattel
the.
sponsored the show, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mattel sponsored it, but I doubt very much if they own it. It's probably Gary Goddard, and they did a box set of Captain Power, and I was interviewed
hmm
for it. I'm in the making of documentary. I have an entire Captain Power Bible that's like 100 pages that's never been published anywhere. So
Really?
some point I'll have to put that out there as a perk.
Wow,
You know,
that's awesome.
yeah,
Wow.
to show where the show was started, where it was, because I laid out 5 years of the show,
Right.
and then when Joe came aboard, then it took another direction as well, because we were all dealing with the logistics of production, because that was very, very, very difficult, because our ambitions were so high, and but it was good to start with high ambitions, because then a lot of your team come up with very inventive ways of doing things that no one has ever done before, and that worked out both for Captain Power and for Babylon 5 in particular,
For
which I
sure.
also wrote for.
Yeah,
So
you were for all the best of all the awesomeness,
I was very,
and still writing too for Space
yeah,
Command.
still doing it. But I was very lucky because I was the first generation of television kids. My wife grew up on radio. So when she talks about the Lone Ranger, it's the radio version. And when I talk about it, it's Clayton Moore and so forth. But I grew up, with like, all these great shows when I was a kid, and that shaped who I am. And then I was in sort of this golden age of sort of very cool animation with He-Man
Right.
and Real Ghostbusters and all these other shows I wrote for. Smurfs was very fun to write for, and Super Friends, all that stuff. It wasn't great animation, but it was really fun to write for.
Storytelling for sure. Yeah.
And and then I wrote for Next Gen and DS9 and all those shows. And so it was this golden era of late 70s to late 90s, where there were just great shows being made. And then after that, the technology arrived where I could now, here in 2023,
For sure.
make my own show and have 1900 visual effects shots in the first 2 hours and
Gee whiz,
all
man.
that craziness that you couldn't do, even on TV, you couldn't do that
Right.
many. So I'm just kind of this strange little machine that goes. But my mentors were Serling and Ray Bradbury and Guillermo del Toro and all these wonderful, amazing, brilliant creators. And I've learned from all of them, very much so.
Well, Mark, we're going to wrap up here. I think we're at the
Cool.
52nd third mark. I want to tell everybody to check this episode out on Subspace. Will be airing next week on Thursday, 7 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific. Mark, always a pleasure, sir.
Great. Well, thanks so much. I loved being part of this, and thanks for everything you do. It's really important to spread the goodness. So
Appreciate you, sir. We'll always spread the goodness and always take care. We'll love to have you back in next time you come on, man.
you bet. We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.